I have a question for you that I've been posing to other people as well. Conservatism as a movement was pitched as a movement of ideas. I remember this being very clearly written in the late 70s and early 80s, thinking ideas will win out in the end. Is conservatism still a movement of ideas? If so, what new ideas do they have? If not, what should the new approach be? I have my own take. I'm curious as to what you think.
Well, any movement to have any success at all has to be a movement of ideas. But it can't only be a movement of ideas because the ideas will not go anywhere. We are seeing right now how our ideas are excluded from the public sphere, whether it's Yahoo or Twitter or Google or whatever it is. And so you have to be able to be active enough with your ideas. I mean, Jesus had a message, but then he tells the 12, go forth and tell everybody this message, right? And so I think for too long, conservatives have just thought, well, we have the better ideas, they will win. They won't win if nobody gets to hear them. And that was sort of the point of rock and roll. Reagan understood this. Reagan said, grudgingly, because he wasn't a rock and roll fan, he liked the Beach Boys, but he wasn't a rock fan. But he says, we're going to blast rock and roll into the Eastern European countries through Voice of America and Radio Free Europe. And they had a big debate about this. And some people said, that music's not fitting to send. We need to be sending an opera. And they, no. If you want to affect the kids, you better be sending in what the kids are listening to. And one of the issues that I think conservative artists have is that they've got to understand how to get that edge, that same edge that the left has, without compromising the goodness of their ideas.
Right. If you have to kind of go undercover and take a vector to get into somebody's brain, don't dilute the message or lose really what the ultimate goal and the purpose of the message was. I think that conservatism as a movement of ideas, like you said, there are concepts, but it needs to be about action. So little action seems to be taking place. And in fact, from David French and others on the right, it seems that they have been swallowed up by the ideas of the left and are even taking action to people towards their right now. We need what I called a critical conservative theory, right? The critical part of critical race theory and critical theory in general is that philosophy without activism is nothing. It's worthless. You have to take action. You have to make change in the institutions. That's the approach that we need. But man, we're like 40 or 50 years behind the ball in terms of taking action. Larry, last question. If you had magic wand and you were in charge of everything and everybody, and you wanted to see, first of all, what would your outcome be? What would you like to see change, and how would you go about doing it? I'm very interested to see what your overarching strategy would be to resolve the problems that you've identified, and in what capacity, and how do we move forward? What is your prescription?
Okay, well, let me take just two areas, culture and education. In terms of culture, I would see a pool of very wealthy conservatives just run amok funding graphic novels, music, movies. Even if they lose money, understand you're probably going to lose money. That's not the point. The point is to get the message out, get it 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 out. The Bible says faith comes by hearing, not having heard. Hearing and hearing and hearing and hearing. And so you've got to keep hearing these messages in order to understand what your movement is all about. In terms of education, I would see a massive groundswell. I would view it as a two-step method. One, to charter free market kinds of schools away from public schools, then to more homeschooling. So I'd have a three-tier system. Homeschooling for most people, charter schools for those who can't homeschool, and then public schools, good public schools, for those who absolutely can't afford to go to a charter school or don't have the family situation to homeschool. So those would be my two biggest reforms.
Right. And you didn't say anything about a new law or a new government initiative or a specific candidate or anything like that, right?
No. And I think you may need to block some things, like block the teaching of CRT, things like that, but you don't need to mandate. I'm not all that big on mandating teaching free market economics. If you just have a course that teaches basic economics, honestly, you can't help but be a free market advocate.
Indeed. So I love the fact that when given a magic wand, you're not talking about getting DeSantis elected or vetoing this bill or getting out of Afghanistan or whatever. It's about starting full circle here, guys. Man, you'd think I put effort and planning into these things. Full circle. It comes all the way back to reinforcing the four pillars of American exceptionalism, starting with the people and the children, creating the guardrails, the culture, the environment that create the kind of people that flourish within the system that we've created. And in the absence of that, what we find are people who are opposed to the form of government that we have created all their own oughts and shoulds, and they're telling everybody what they ought and should do. And they are rising in power and have taken over institutions and media and culture and absolutely everything that we used to hold dear that gave us meaning and purpose and power in our life, because we stood back and we're like, free markets, free society, blah, 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 freedom, freedom, freedom. All these people, they rise up, and what is their message? It's anti-freedom. It's anti-freedom. It's hilarious. It would be hilarious in its irony if it wasn't so sad, because we're all living it. And the American experiment is certainly under siege at the moment. Larry, anything else you'd like to get in here before we wrap up? This has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I didn't tell you about how I almost burned down the Yuma Convention Center.
You want to end on that one?
Sure.
Tell us.
We were opening for the James Gang. Joe Walsh had just left, and Tommy Bolin, great guitarist, but he couldn't sing like Joe could, had come in. And I was just pioneering a flaming drum solo where we would stick timpani mallets in lighter fluid, basically. This is our first take at this. And the idea was that the lights would go out, and I had these two big bass drums. And my singer would go backstage and squeeze out, this is the important part, squeeze out the mallets and then light them on fire and hand them to me. Meanwhile, the other guys in the band would be wiping down all my cymbals with more flammable goo, right? Corky was so excited when the lights went out, he forgot to squeeze the mallets out.
Oh my God.
So he lights them and he hands them to me, and I do the big rock pose, the Jack Black pose. And I'm just going to hit one cymbal. Now, I always use this to talk to kids about a message, how you can succeed in life by doing something that's very easy and making it look hard, which is basically what a lot of magicians do. I mean, yeah, they have skill with their tricks, but basically it's all about, oh, look at all this, oh, the dancing girls, oh, the smoke, the fire, a pigeon, oh man, that's wild, right? So you can take something that looks that's very easy, but make it look hard, or pull a Michael Jordan, which is take something that's very hard and make it look easy, which is you fly through the air and you go over 16 people and you dunk, and that's it. So I wasn't that great a drummer. I was okay, but so I took method one, and so I was just going to hit one cymbal here and set that one on fire, right? So boom, and it looked like the Mekong Delta. I mean, it was apocalypse now. There was flames shooting across the stage, and they're running out there with fire extinguishers, and they're stomping out guitars that were on fire. And I realized Corky had forgotten to squeeze out the mallets. And I'm yelling at him, Corky, and he's going, yeah, man, yeah. And so now I hit a cymbal over here, and it's a Mekong Delta on that side of the stage. And now people are getting worried, you're going to burn down the whole convention center. I think there are like 5,000 people in it at that time. So I try to roll around. I had this huge set. And I try to roll around all these drums, set them all on fire. I'm totally surrounded by this wall. And the audience is going nuts because they're sensing you're going to have a human sacrifice, right? And and finally, I was able to do a roll on the snare drum fast enough to put it out. And that you could tell the audience there was just kind of this little, uh, okay, all right, yeah, that was really great. So we fixed it after that, but it came close there to starting a major fire in a major convention hall.
Throwing fire across the stage. I think that's exactly the metaphor that we need for right now. We need to set some things on fire. We need a phoenix to come rising out of the ashes that 1619 is starting to bury us under right now. Larry, I really appreciate your time today. Guys, if you haven't got it, it is a wonderful resource, A Patriot's History of the United States. From Columbus's Great Discovery to America's Age of Entitlement by Larry Schweikart and Michael Allen. 15th anniversary edition, #1 New York Times bestseller, 500,000 copies in print. Congratulations on that continued success.